Okay.
Hey, good day, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, live with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, all the way in Batari Lit, Israel. It's such a joy that he takes the time out of his busy schedule. Shabbos is over there in Israel, so we're okay to go and share this broadcast. Ethics of the Fathers. I'm so enjoying this class. It is something that we all need to grasp, grip, understand where they're coming from as far as the ethics. And I'm just so enjoying the way Rabbi Coffman's sharing this. Rabbi Coffman, how are you today? We're so glad to have you with us, and we're glad you're safe.
Doing great. There are some places today that, not all synagogues are shut down, so, people are praying outside. So you have 2 feet, 3 feet or whatever, a couple of meters away, from each other. So I went to pray this morning, and it was very ominous. A lot of clouds. It looked like it was going to rain. It was going to pour right till we got to the very end. That's when it started to rain. So either it was pleasant, in God's ears where he didn't allow the rain, or he said, all right, I've had enough. Everybody out. We're going to shut it down. So it's pretty amazing, pretty amazing to see people, obviously adhering by the medical rules, but, they're being equidistant, but they show they want to come. They want to pray. They want to, get rid of this disease, and according to what the protocol is. And other people saying, just shut it down, be inside. What are you doing being outside? But if that's the protocol, right, and that's what they're telling us to do, and they're not shutting everything down, okay, so then you're outside. It's it's easier. It's easier, but it's a tremendous thing that people actually feel this urge during this time to come and pray. It's not. See, I'm usually Mr. Negative. This is like an unbelievable positive that people want to come. And people want to give whatever they have to their Creator to stop this thing. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So we are holding by first chapter, 10th Mishnah. Right? See how far we get here. Mishnah says, Shemaiah and Avtalya, 2 converts, interesting enough, speak about them. They received the tradition, right? Again, every time it's 2 and 2, right? 2 receive it from 2, passed down. Shemaiah says, love work, despise lordliness. See what that means? Do not become overly familiar with the government. That is going to see if maybe I should do this on controversial issues. We'll see what it means not to be overly familiar with the government. Now, it's interesting. Shemaiah and Avtalya, as we mentioned, were both converts. They were grandchildren of none other than Sancheriv, right? Evil Sancheriv, who mixed up all the nations, right? We don't know who anybody is today, right? Because all the nations he took and, totally messed them up and interspersed them, etc. So you remember that when we mentioned 2, they accepted it from whoever they accepted it from. One is going to be the Av Beis Din, right? One of them is going to be the head of the rabbinical court, and one is going to be the exilar, right? One is the exilar, and in charge of the diaspora, let's say, and you have one that's going to be the head of the rabbinical court. Now, there's an obvious problem. There's an obvious problem over here, and that is to be part of a rabbinical court, a convert's not allowed, right? So if you're going to say, the Tosfos Yom Tov Lipman, Zecher Tzadik Levrachim, may his name be blessed, one of the major commentaries on the Mishnah, asked the question, how could this have been allowed, right? How could they have been allowed if they're converts, one to be the exilarch, one to be part of the rabbinical court, right? Now, again, it's going to be a technicality. We'll see the technicality, right? But a convert is not allowed, right? Really not allowed. So he's allowed to judge a case. It's part of a rabbinical court. Remember, there are always 3 judges, right? Usually for when it comes to money, right? Money damages, there are 3 judges. If it was a death penalty, then they would have a court of 23. And if it was to judge a king or other things, you had the Sanhedrin, right? In corporal punishment, you needed a Sanhedrin, you needed 71. Now, a convert is allowed to judge a case as part of a Beis Din if the litigants are both Jews. Obviously, you're going to have 2 Jews coming, right? 2 Jews coming to a rabbinical court. So if they agree if these two Jews agree that this convert can be on the Beis Din, then that's okay. Then that would be okay. They could force a judgment on another convert. In other words, they don't discriminate amongst converts. So if they gave a judgment, right, a convert came in front of them, they could force them. They could force them, even on a Jewish person, right, someone who was born Jewish, right, and that has to be that the mother is Jewish, right. That, in other words, a convert is someone whose mother, father are not Jewish, right, mainly the mother. Right? We don't go by patrilineal descent. We go by matrilineal descent. So if the mother's Jewish, the child's Jewish. If the mother's not Jewish, then that child's going to have to go through conversion. Right? So that being the case, what's the problem here? Why do we discriminate seemingly against converts? Converts are Jews. Right? Okay, they have to go through the conversion process. Now there are many people out there, I've come in contact, with a number of people that they have Jewish blood. Now, forget the DNA test. DNA test doesn't prove anything, but could be they had, a grandfather, great-grandfather, or even, let's say, great-grandmother that was Jewish. Now, the problem is, if it's on the father's side, they have to go through conversion. If it's on the mother's side, and they've been told they're Jewish, now you have a problem, because since it's not direct, since there's something lacking over here, now all of a sudden over time they're being told that they're Jewish, right? So there's something lacking over here. If there's something lacking over here, they have to prove the Jewishness. In other words, if a person knows they're Jewish, his parents are Jewish, the grandparents are Jewish, no one's ever going to ask you when you come to the land of Israel, and you want to make aliyah, right? You want to come and live in the land. So you have to show that you're Jewish. How do you show that you're Jewish? So you have to have a rabbi write you a letter, right? Saying, I know the family, I know however many generations, I know them to be Jewish, etc. But if there's, let's say, a conversion in there, or let's say there's some information that's, for the English, it's a little bit dodgy, right? Or as they would say, dodgy, right? It's a little bit dodgy. So therefore, it brings it down a level. Now you have to prove it. What's the way you're going to prove it? Just as a side point, either a marriage document, right? You have to prove the mother or grandmother had a proper Jewish marriage document, or 4 generations buried in a Jewish cemetery. Now, in either of these cases, they're probably never going to be able to prove it, right? They probably certainly don't have a marriage document, and if they don't have a marriage document, they have to show that their family is buried in a Jewish cemetery 4 generations. That's going to be a very difficult thing. Now, it could be these people are Jewish, right? It's just they don't have documentation. So if they don't have documentation, now they have to prove it, right? They don't have documentation. They can't prove it, so then they have to go through conversion, right? You could have people that are what we call anusim, Moranos, right? They were secret Jews. And they had these different customs, etc. But they eventually converted out, or whatever the case is. And now they're not Jewish, so now they have to go through conversion. But it could be way back when they were actually Jewish, but now they can't prove it. So now they have to go through conversion. So now the issue is why.
Oh, you seem to lost you. You froze for a second. Can you still hear me, Rabbi?
Torah says, yeah, go ahead.
No, we lost you for 1 second, Rabbi.
Okay, we good now?
We're good now. We got you back.
Okay. So there's a verse in the Torah speaks about kings, right? It says, "Som tasim alecha melech," put upon yourself a king. Jewish people were jealous of non-Jews. They wanted a king. Kingship wasn't necessarily the greatest thing for the Jewish people. We had a lot of evil kings. Etc. Nonetheless, it says that God is going to choose, and it says mikerev achecha, from amongst your kids. From amongst your brothers. If it says amongst your brothers, right, then it says lo tuchal lateit alecha ish nochri. You're not allowed to put a foreigner, right, a foreigner as a king, because he's not your brother. If he's your brother, meaning His mother's Jewish. He has to be your brother. If the mother's not Jewish and he went through conversion, there's a technical issue. The technical issue is he's not called your kin. He's not called your brethren. People are going to say, you discriminate against converts. There's an explicit verse. You can take it up with God. It's not my issue. Right. You can take it up with God. The issue is you don't have the pedigree. It's no offense to anybody. You weren't born Jewish. Right? I get this question a lot. Really don't want to get into it, but people say, why wasn't I born Jewish? Why do I have to go through these hoops and whatever? So I don't have an answer to that. Right? In other words, these souls that come back to Torah, that want to convert, were at Mount Sinai. They were actually there. So what happened to them? They intermarried. Right? They ended up at some point intermarrying. The mother's not Jewish. That's it. So someone who wants to be Jewish, the only reason they would ever want to become Jewish is because they have that spark inside them. Because no one in their right mind, I don't care how spiritual you are or whatever, you come to Torah and you see what the Torah says. 80% does not make any logical sense. For Jews to come back to Torah, I've heard this a lot from family and other people. Why would you choose to be a fanatic? Why would you choose? You were born into it. These laws don't make sense according to them. You were born into it. Why in the world would you go to that extreme? If you say that about a Jew who was born a Jew, imagine a non-Jew. A non-Jew comes in and then they hear, hey, if I touch your wine and it's not cooked wine, I can't drink it. I got to flush it down the toilet. Spiritual cooties. Right? So you're going to say, wow, I get all these laws that seem to discriminate against non-Jews, against women, all these things. But obviously, as we always say, you have to look at things in context, right? So over here, a non-Jew to choose Judaism, why would they ever do it? Right? In general, you tell me they look at Christianity and the whole thing's a bunch of malarkey and it doesn't make sense and there are a lot of lies and they misinterpret, whatever it is, that's all true. Right? That's all true. When you come to Judaism and you see all these laws and everything you have to do and keeping kosher and keeping Shabbos and keeping festivals, cleaning our houses like we're crazy people in quarantine, can't get out. So busy doing this, you got your kids home, but you got to prepare, right? You got to prepare for the holiday. So, but a lot of these things for Jews don't make sense. All the more so non-Jews. So as my Rabbi says, if a non-Jew moves into a Jewish community and they still want to convert, he said either 100% the real deal or in my language a little bit they're a little bit wacko, right? So over here we're not talking about second-class citizens. There's a technicality. Your mother was not born Jewish, or you can't prove it, right? Or you can't prove it. So you say, but that's not fair. So let me ask you the $1 million question. Do you have a pedigree? You don't have the pedigree. Doesn't matter. You might be more observant than most Jews, right? Than 95% of most Jews. Irrelevant. Do you have the pedigree or not? If you don't have the pedigree, then you have to go through conversion. You don't want to go through conversion? Okay. But if you don't have the pedigree, how should you be allowed to serve? Right? How could you be a judge over here? It says, Mikerev achecha. You have to be amongst your brother, your brethren. You're not amongst your brethren. Your mother wasn't Jewish. It's not fair. If I would have had a choice, if I would have been there, someone told me many years ago, they said, one of the things I mentioned to them was a non-Jew, cannot keep Shabbos like a Jew. Right? Even in the process of conversion, they can keep everything, but they have to do something on purpose to show they're not keeping it like a Jew. Light a match, start their car, turn on a computer, whatever it is. So then someone copped an attitude and says, but God doesn't want me to do that. He doesn't want me to break Shabbos. I said, well, the rabbis say if you break Shabbos and you keep it like a Jew, you're liable for a death penalty. You believe in the rabbis? You believe in oral law? You believe, that was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Mount Sinai? And the person kept coming back, but I can't imagine this is what God wants. Back and forth. Finally, they said, had I been there in my great-great-great-great-grandfather's time, I would not have rejected the Torah. I would have been part of Avram Avinu. I would have gone. I said, we don't care what you would have done. We don't care. We don't care. You would have said this. I would have done that. It's over, right? There was a certain time that it was closed. You want to join the Jewish people? Good. If you didn't join and it's closed, you have to go through conversion. So over here, doesn't matter what you would have thought, doesn't matter what you would have done. At the end of the day, you have to go through conversion. Now, a lot of people I come in contact with have this issue, right? There are plenty of people I deal with also that are 100% non-Jews, across the board, nothing to talk about. Good. But if they have Jewish blood, you got to prove it. Because now we have something lacking over here. If you can't prove it, even though you may be Jewish, okay, so now you have to go through conversion. But if you go through conversion, your mother wasn't Jewish, or it wasn't proven she was Jewish, there's a technical issue. It's not about we just want to discriminate against non-Jews, and we hate non-Jews and all this. Could be we do in other ways, but in this case, it's a technicality, right? So therefore, the mother has to be Jewish in order for that child to be Jewish, in order for that child to be a rabbinic court judge, right? That's the case. There are cases they can judge. Again, if they're accepted by a Jew, two litigants come in, they accept them, fine. Right, but in general, it shouldn't be done. Right, that is, that's just one idea about Shammai and Naphtali, and that's, I thought important to bring up because essentially the converts, right, and so you're going to ask, you're going to ask the question if they're judges, which they are, and they're converts, how can it be, right? So says the Mishnah. Now I'll actually start the Mishnah here. Mishnah says, what does it mean to love work? One explanation is, even if you have a livelihood, let's say you own a lot of property, you have a property manager, good property manager, so you got all these properties, you don't have to work, right? They're running it essentially. You're getting the money each month. Do I still need to do something? Or let's say even better. Well, there you already have a business, so you have to sort of watch it. But let's say, a person sold his business, relatively young, doesn't have to be so old, right? So what does he do? He sells his business, so he's got all this money, it's gaining interest. He doesn't put it in the stock market, put it in something safer, something less volatile, and he's getting interest every month. And that's how they're living. Now, if someone is doing that, should they still be doing something to make a living? Right? Now, if they have this money, they're making interest, they can sit and learn all day, right? They have the ability. If they have the ability, they can sit and learn. Why are they gonna say 6-7 hours a day? They should be busy with work. They can live off the interest, right? But over here, what does it mean to love work? It means that even if a person doesn't work, what are they gonna do? They're gonna waste their time, right? It'll bring them to do, terrible things because they are busy, right? Sorry, they're doing other things. There are certain people that are pasul edus. They are disqualified from being witnesses. One of them is what the Talmud says is a masachik bekuvia. A masachik bekuvia means like a card shark. Right, he likes to go to casinos. Well, won't be doing that today. Everything's shut down. But what happens? That's how he makes his living. Right? The Talmud says on that it's not a good thing, because one answer is he's not oisik b'yeshuvu sha'olam. He's not working. Right? He's not doing something for the world technically. So I would say, who cares? Let him live off the money. Right? What's the big deal? So let's say somebody had enough money. Right? This was actually an interesting case. Somebody, let's say, sold their business. They were relatively young, and they went to casinos 3-4 times a year. They didn't do it every day, right? But they had enough money to live on. But this is what they did, right? 3-4 times a year. In that case, does that make it forbidden? Does that make it forbidden for them to give testimony. So it's really talking about somebody who does this on a regular basis, because they hang out with not so great people, and they're not doing anything practical, right? They're not doing something productive, right? Everything about going to a good high school, getting a degree, right? So you can get a good college, so you can, may have a very difficult week. You might have 2 mornings and 2 afternoons a week. You might actually strain your brain, get a degree, because everyone and their mother says you have to have the degree, right? Well, not totally true, but be that as it may, because you got to do something in this world. You have to be productive, right? And if you're not productive, then what are you doing? That's why people will say, even Jews will say, oh, this guy sits and learns all day. His wife works, supports, whatever. He's sitting learning all day. What a sponge. He gets donations, whatever. They raise money, whatever. They say, what a sponge, not doing anything for the world. Or as they would say here in Israel, call him a parasitim. Call him a parasite, just sucks off the government, sucks off this, sucks off that, not doing anything for the world. But they never learned Pirkei Avos. Goes in ethics of our father that says, what are one of the 3 pillars? Do a little bit of review. What are one of the 3 pillars that hold up the world is Torah. If you don't have Torah learning, the world goes back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. Goes back to the original chaos. The back of that Led Zeppelin album, you know what I'm talking about, right? Chaos! Goes back to chaos. Everyone agrees that's bad. Well, it might be good because you won't have to listen to me. But, everyone agrees that's going to be bad, right? So they're going to say, oh, but, this person's getting paid. He's not really doing anything for the world. So I remember someone told a great story. Someone said, he had a relative that was studying at university, getting a stipend, and everyone said, oh, look at so-and-so. Look what he's doing for the world. He's writing a book on tax law. Wow. That is unbelievable, but he's getting money. He's taking money. He's getting a stipend. Of course he's getting a stipend. He's got to write this important book on tax law. So how's he going to survive? Oh, but someone who learns Torah gets a stipend and say, oh, he's a parasite. He's a bloodsucker. He's not doing anything for the world. No, but this guy's writing an important book on tax law. But I digress. Right? The point is, if someone's not doing something productive, if someone's not productive, quote unquote, now obviously it needs a definition, but if they're not working, quote unquote, they're not doing something for the world, doesn't matter what they're selling or whatever it is, right? They could be selling cars, they could be selling things on Amazon, they could be doing meaningless things. But as long as they're getting a paycheck, that's doing something for the world, right? So here, if you had enough money to retire, right? If you had enough money to retire, and now you're getting interest off it, why should I say someone should work? Why in the world they have to work? They can sit and learn. Now, if you're not equipped to sit and learn, I understand, right? But, then a person's just going to go crazy because they can't do it. It's too hard. Fine, right? So if they're able to learn, right? They certainly should. If not, okay, then they should, they should be working, and they should obviously be finding time to learn. But again, if someone's making enough money, obviously the business doesn't run by itself, right? That's true. The question is, how many hours do you have to put into it? I think, some people often exaggerate what the amount of time that has to be put in. It could be, some more time could be taken for learning. Again, it's going to depend on the business, it's going to depend on a lot of things, but if someone's doing something, they claim, quote unquote, they're preparing for business or whatever, for their business, whatever it is, could be after 120 years, they get upstairs and God's going to say, yeah, but that you didn't need to do that. You did that as extra, but it didn't need to be done. That goes on the side of transgression because you should have been learning. Right. Anytime you're not working, obviously a guy should be learning. I has to help in the house. Okay, so that's he has to help to a certain extent, but he also that's the only permissibility to learn, right? Is if he's not working, right? The permissibility to work, right? Is the fact that he's exempt from learning because he's working. But what about when he's done? What about he's done? He doesn't have to help in the house. He sits back and reads the newspaper, does other things. When he could be learning. So that's a problem. He's going to be held accountable, right? He's certainly going to be held accountable before, for that. So that's one thing. It comes on Rabbeinu Yonah of Girondi, famous for Shari Tshuva, the gate to repentance, also has a major commentary on Pirkei Avos. He brings a verse from Proverbs chapter 21, verse 25. He says, the lust of the sluggard will kill him, for his hands refuse to work. Now, that means when a person doesn't work, he's lazy, right? Essentially, he's lazy. Now, what happens if he decides, okay, I'm going to change over here, and now I'm going to work hard? He's got the desire, now he wants to work hard. What's the problem? Problem is, he already spent so much time being a sluggard. Love that word. He's going to be a sluggard. He's not going to do anything. He's Mr. Lazy with a capital L. What happens? His body's not going to allow him to, because of the desire to be lazy. Now, does it mean it's impossible? Doesn't mean it's impossible. But, it's a very bad character trait to have in general. That person doesn't have motivation. If a person doesn't have motivation, and they're pretty much lazy, you cannot turn on and off a switch. Right? In other words, you can't say, okay, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to totally change. It doesn't work like that. Right? It has to be done step by step. When it's done step by step, it can happen. But if you try and flip the switch overnight, right? Obviously it doesn't work that way. So that's another explanation. And being lazy when it comes to avodas Hashem, serving God, it's very, very, very hard, because in spiritual terms, right, there are a number of things that can kill a person spiritually. One of them is doing things by rote, right? In other words, the person gets into things or whatever, he starts doing things by rote, and he just forgets about everything. He goes on automatic pilot, right? That is akin to spiritual death, right? We mentioned many times. And a person cannot be happy with just being mediocre, right? We know what mediocrity gets you. Go for a job interview. They say, okay, what are you good at? Well, I sort of do this 50%. I sort of do that. I do the other thing. They're like, next, right? No one's going to be interested, right? Being mediocre means that I don't have any desires. I don't have any goals. Okay, you want to make money? Fine. Right? If you have to sell something, you ain't going to sell anything, with that attitude. So, a person themselves, you can't be lazy over here. So one aspect that is hard in serving God is the fact that doing things by rote, right? I do things on automatic pilot. That we have to break our bad habit. That's one thing. Second thing that stops us from avodas Hashem, that's serving God properly, is that we're lazy. Now that means that, there are a lot of things we have to do, a lot of obligations, and we don't rise to the occasion. What happens is we say, that's a stringency. Oh, I can rely on this leniency. I don't have to be such a fanatic. It's not even being mediocre. It's doing the least amount, to get by. So a person, technically speaking, could keep a lot of Torah, get upstairs, and God's going to say, you don't really keep very much. Why not? Because you did the minimal level. There is a minimal level, right? God's not looking for the minimal level. He wants you to strive. He wants you to be better. He wants you to reach potential. Right? He does not want you to say, I'm happy being mediocre. Right? That is, and for someone who's lazy or puts things off or whatever, it's very, very hard. It's very, very hard to change that. Right? There are a lot of bad character traits that we have that, okay, they're overcomable, in different ways and different gradations, and how to deal with them. When it comes to being lazy, that's what smoking a lot of pot will do. That will kill your brain cells and make you not want to do anything, right? So even if you don't do that, you just kill your brain cells yourself, right? First, playing video games, doing other things just to just to waste time or whatever, let the brain atrophy. So you don't get anywhere. It just feeds into it, right? So now in this time in quarantine, I saw someone put up a post. Well, not so bad being at home. You got Netflix. How much can you watch? A person, is stuck for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long this is going to last. How much in the world can you watch before you go out of your mind? No, it might be interesting stuff. It might be fun, but for goodness sakes, the brain always needs stimulation. But if you feed it garbage, right, that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be continual. So when a person goes in this way of laziness, and you keep feeding into it, it's it's not even going in a quicksand and sinking. It's like you're at the bottom of the pit. You just keep going down and down. It's very, very hard. It's very, very hard to climb out. You got to in this world today, holding on to Torah mitzvahs and clinging to what God wants, you got to be super motivated, because the rest of the world isn't. And then people are going to say things, people will do things, whatever. And if you're not strong in your beliefs, finished, it's very easy to get broken down. So that's what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Another explanation over here means loving work. What does work mean over here? It doesn't just mean physical work. It means Torah. Because in the word melacha, mem lamed aleph chaf, you could put a what do you call it, a kamat, whatever, vowel underneath the chaf, and that would be melacha, but it's got a hey, right? It's got an extra hey. So grammatically you don't need it there, right? In other words, you could use this word without a hey. But one of the explanations is why. What's the extra hey for? So it represents Torah, because Torah needs great effort. It needs time, similarly to one that works a job. Because the Talmud tells us the person who learns Torah, it weakens the body. Why does it weaken the body? Because when a person learns, unless you're learning it like mathematics, or you're learning it very quickly, like you would read a newspaper or something like that, you'll get something out of it, right? But you won't get the toil of Torah, right? The toil of Torah is getting into the picayune details, right? Is delving deep into it. It's like a job. People would say to me, years ago, I was like, oh, you just sit and learn. I was like, you want to try it 10 hours a day? I don't think you'll last. I don't think you'll last a couple of days, right? We only maximize maybe 3% of our brain, right? If that. I said, here, what you're learning and what you're going through, these are concepts that are foreign to us in general, even though there's a lot of the Torah that makes sense, the laws of damages, etc. But it's in depth. Even though I remember, there's a piece of Talmud that says that learning the laws of damage is the closest thing to our understanding. Right? In other words, it's something we can fathom. Right? It's not like the holidays. It's not like other issues. This is something we can actually sink our teeth in. We can really understand. And I'm sitting there saying, I have no clue what in the world's going on. What's the claim? What's the answer? What's the give and take? Right? What's the back and forth? And I remember, I asked one of my rabbis, I'm like, if this is the closest thing to our understanding, we're in big trouble. Right? So the answer given was, don't forget, this is called Torah Elohim. Right? This is the everlasting word of God. So even though it might be what we understand, or what is possible for us to understand, right? At the end of the day, it takes effort, right? It takes work. So when a person finishes a tractate of Talmud, right, there's a certain thing you say at the end, right? When you make a siyum for finishing this tractate, it says, we strive in Torah, and they, secular people, strive, right? We strive in Torah, they strive in other things, right? We strive and receive rewards. They strive and don't receive reward. Why? Because what they're doing, even if whatever they're doing in their lives, right? Why are they going to get reward for it? Because even if they're working or whatever, right? It's not Torah, right? So the fact that we want to be part of the people that learn Torah, that get merit for learning Torah, right? Again, person has to work, they have to work. I'm not saying not, right? But a person, the most important thing is learning Torah, no question, right? Certainly no question. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big balance, Rabbi, especially for someone like myself, who was semi-retired, coming out of that, wanting to dive into Torah, meeting the Jewish people and having rabbis begin to share. I've shared with you personally some of the things I've
Right.
gone through and asked for your advice. And I found myself just in the last couple of weeks starting a new job. I'm too young to retire. It's great to sit around and learn Torah all day. I've been having fun, doing some CG animation and graphic design to help the cause and all. But, at the end of the day, you get long in the tooth, frustrated, and then ask for donations. We did this non-magazine, North American Noahide.
Right.
I spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to do this, try to get out there and reach. And for some reason, Hashem's saying, learn, grow. It's not something you market. And I think what you're touching on here with this Mishnah really balanced it out, because you shared with me, hey, Hashem's not going to bless this past that point. And I'm now, joyful at this new role. I actually am in an opportunity where I can help more people in my community on a broader scale. I was at an elderly building yesterday, and you can just see the concerns of this COVID starting to hit, and opportunities are opening. And it's all joy that Torah must be applied. You can't just be a sponge and soak it up indefinitely, because the sponge has a limit of what it can take. You got to do something with it, right?
Well, that's what my Rebbe's Rabbi, Moshe Schneider, famous student of the Chofetz Chaim, Zecher Tzadik L'Vrocha, may his name be blessed, would say that I want my students to learn Torah, but not like what they call a frummer student, like an ultra-Orthodox student, because there's a lot of intellectual stimulation. We're going to get to it shortly. There's a lot of intellectual stimulation a person can get from learning Torah without Kabbalah, right? Having nothing to do with Kabbalah, right? But if it doesn't get you to change, Torah is about change, right? Torah is about is direction for life. So if a person says, "Wow, this is great," I get a lot out of it, but they don't change, they're not learning Torah. It may smell like Torah, may look like Torah, but if it has no effect on their life, then that's not what Torah is. Torah is supposed to be applied, right? Like you said, it's supposed to be lived, etc. So now the way the world comes to someone, a worker, right? We'll speak about work. Someone who's a worker is, when they finish working, Torah obligation to pay them, right? You have to pay them on the same day. Now, obviously, if they're salaried, whatever, that's different. If he doesn't finish the work, now, interesting enough, he puts in a lot of effort. He doesn't finish the work, doesn't matter how many hours, doesn't get paid. Right? Let's say you hire someone to fix your car, and he spent days trying to figure out the problem, went through this apart, that apart, right? But you're not necessarily going to pay him for all those hours. All right, he finally finished it, right? But okay, you have to make some sort of deal, whatever is going to be paid, right? But if a person didn't finish the job, right? Again, on the Torah level here, if he didn't finish the job, doesn't matter how much time he put in, he doesn't get paid, right? He doesn't unless they make conditions ahead of time. Somebody who learns Torah, they're only going to get the effort. They're going to get the reward for the effort, even if they don't fully understand the ramifications. They reap the benefit of their action, right? So in other words, let's say two people learn whatever, they learn Jewish law. One person figures out the law, in, 20 minutes, half an hour, and he comes up to the right conclusion. Someone else puts a lot more effort in, right? Goes from the sources, that comes to the wrong conclusion. Who gets greater reward? So you would tell me, well, obviously the person who got it right, let's say he's a genius, he got it right. So if he got it right, he deserves greater reward, right? But he didn't put all the effort in. The effort is everything. Because even if a person would come to the wrong conclusion, but if they put tremendous amount of effort in, again, coming to the wrong conclusion they get the reward for the effort. Because you might say, if I learn something and it's not applied or I can't apply it or whatever, why should I get reward for it? I didn't finish. I didn't understand the ramifications. Right? I didn't get everything I should have gotten out of it. So why should I get the benefit? If he's talking about a regular worker, when's he going to get paid? When he finishes. If he doesn't finish, doesn't matter how many hours he put. He'll get paid when he finishes. So what if a person learns something, he's in the middle? He stops that day, he put in hours and hours. He goes next day, still doesn't finish it. This ramification, that ramification, back and forth, this and that. Takes a certain amount of time. So you can tell me retroactively he doesn't get reward. Why'd you get reward? He didn't finish. Says over here, no. The effort that you put in. The effort you put in, you're going to get the benefit even if you don't understand fully the ramifications. In other words, if I read a piece of Talmud, let's be clear. If I read a piece of Talmud, I don't understand anything. I read it like a monkey. Do I get reward? No. I have to put effort in trying to understand it. If I read written Torah, not oral law, do I get reward if I don't understand it? Yes. Right? That's on the Torah level. If I learn Kabbalah, which I'm not recommending, if I would learn Kabbalah and not understand a single word, very, very difficult, right? Kabbalah is very, very difficult Aramaic. You got to know a whole lot of other things going through it. If I don't understand a word, do I get credit? Do I get merit? Yes. Only one reason why. Because of the holiness of the letters. Kabbalah is something different. Right? You got to put the best effort in. In other words, you're learning oral law. Oral law means that I have to understand. I have to make the effort to understand. If I read it like a newspaper, I don't understand it, what am I doing? Right? What in the world am I doing? Torah shebichsav, written Torah, something else. Right? Something else. Right? So comes along the Shloh HaKadosh. Famous Shloh says that rabbis become decisors of Jewish law. Right? What does smicha today mean? What is rabbinic ordination? It's totally different than what it used to be. We don't have real rabbinic ordination today. People are called rabbis, either, took exams, the laws of Shabbos, the laws of kashrus, family purity laws, could be other things. So, there is something to be said for that knowledge. Right? It's certainly not the same amount that, they knew in the times of the Talmud. It's a joke. Right? It's a total joke. Yeah. So someone who becomes a posek, a decider of Jewish law. So they can have a tremendous amount of knowledge, but they have to work very hard in learning Torah. In other words, let's say someone becomes a master of the laws of Shabbos. Intricate details. What's permitted, what's not, when can you rely on a leniency? Someone broke it on purpose. Am I allowed to get benefit? Not allowed to get benefit? I mean, there are a million questions that come up. So you have to be proficient. But even if you're proficient, you have to know when to be lenient if you have to be. Right? Two people can ask the same question. And one person you can be lenient with, the other person you shouldn't be lenient with. Right? It depends where they're holding. Depends on a number of different factors. Now, it's certainly better to rely on what one has learned and say, okay, we'll just be stringent. Well, it's very easy to be stringent. Right? The Talmud says, Koach teheter adif. Power is to the one that can permit things. Now, obviously within certain ramifications. We're not going to say anyone who permits things, that's a great thing. It has to be under certain parameters. You can't rely on things that nobody relies on. Right? Unless it's something that you don't have a choice. One of the questions came up, people can't pray in synagogues in a lot of places. Right? So what do you do? So Rabbi said, let's say you have apartment buildings, a lot of apartment buildings, people stand on their merpeset, they stand on their balcony, right? They stand on their balcony and they have 10 people there, they have 10 men there. They see each other, right? If they see each other, this is the halacha, if they see each other, they're allowed to be included in a quorum, right, of 10 men. Now, what about today? Shabbos, what about reading Torah? What do you do about that? right? So if it's done outside, someone reads Torah, right? You call up 7 people. You can't really call up 7 people if not everybody's there. But the question is, let's say you call somebody up. This is just an interesting question. What happens if you call somebody up? Now, the whole point is when you called up to the Torah, you make the blessing. You have to follow inside the Torah. If you can't follow inside the Torah, you don't know how to read it, you shouldn't be called up. But there is a leniency. Someone who, let's say someone's coming back to Judaism. They don't necessarily know how to read Torah. How can you call them up? So one of the later commentaries says, there's a concept, what we call shmiya ka'oina. If I hear, shmiya means I hear, ona means I answer. Right? So what does that mean? It means someone makes the blessing, somebody reads, right? Someone reads, someone answers, and you hear it. So even if I don't understand a single word, there's a concept. He can say it, I can hear it. And it works in a lot of things, right? By Kiddush, Friday night, right? The head of the household will make Kiddush. Everybody hears them making the blessing. Everyone answers Amen. I have intention, they have intention. And it works. Only one person has to drink the wine or the grape juice, right? But that's the concept. It works. I can fulfill somebody's obligation. Let's say the reading of the Megillah, the book of Esther. One person makes the blessing. Everybody answers Amen. And he reads the book, right? Someone blows the shofar. Same thing. So over here, Rabbi said an unbelievable novelty. According to the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah of Vilna, right? He's an 8th generation descendant through his mother, one of the great rabbis 250 years ago. So the Vilna Gaon held, as long as you could see, as long as you can see the Torah scroll, right? Even if you can't read it because you're too far away, you could include him. Big chiddush, it's a very big novelty. But he says at certain times you could rely on this. Now all of a sudden he's got big shoulders, physically also. But something like that at a certain time you can rely on. Obviously, if you don't have to rely on it, you don't rely on it, right? But if you're in a time period like we are today, and that's the only way to do it, he said you can rely on it. Now, so now when you say the Shema, that's one idea, right? So that's actually a predecessor. We're going to say now that when we say the Shema, before we say Shema Yisrael, the Shema Yisrael prayer, right? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. In the paragraph before, in the morning, we say Lilmod, Lamed, Lishmor, V'lasas. Lilmod means you'll learn it. Lamed means you'll teach it. Lishmor means you'll guard it, meaning you'll keep it. And Lasos means you'll do it. Right? So my Rabbi brought down his commentary on this piece of Talmud. And my Rabbi said that there are going to be people, there are going to be rabbis that learn from books that give, let's say short answers to questions. Is this permissible, not permissible, whatever it is, what we call a kitzer sefer, a whatever shortened version. Right? It's not so much in depth, but a person's looking for a quick answer for something, they look at these books.
Concise.
I'm not saying they're bad. You just have to know what you're doing. So my Rebbe said, you're going to have rabbis going to look at this and rely on it, and they'll be lenient when they should be stringent, and stringent when they should be lenient. Now, when I was in South America, when I was in Chile, I saw this clear as day. So I called him up, and I was learning this piece of Talmud, and I saw this clear as day. So I called up my Rebbe, and I said, unbelievable, you're right. He goes, of course I'm right. He goes, about what? So I told him this. I said, I have a commentary on this piece of Talmud, whatever, and I see it with my own eyes, right? So he said, tongue in cheek, he said, if I wouldn't have said it, you wouldn't have believed it. I was like, no, that's not really the point. The point is, I see it in action. I see people with puny brains. And they think they know something. I'm not gonna say they don't know anything, right? They think they know something, but they're lenient when they should be stringent, and vice versa. So what does it mean? So my language, they're a travesty of a mockery of a sham. That's what they are. So they call themselves rabbi, big whoop, right? They're transgressing, giving over laws they should never do. Period. right? So in other words, even if a person is a decisor of Jewish law, you don't rely on what you remember. You got to look it up. And if you're not sure, you delve into it. If you're still not sure, ask somebody that's bigger, right? Someone that knows more. Do not rely on what you think. Yeah, question.
Well, my point is, with what you're saying about being lenient when they should be stringent and stringent when they should be lenient, we see this principle in action with somebody said Rabbi Google or Dr. Google.
Mike is out. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Your mic.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You cannot hear me. Uh-oh. Let me check here, Rabbi. Not at all?
Come on, it's Coffman's Law.
Oh, there. Everybody else can hear me just fine. Yeah, I don't think it's on my end. My end is recording fine. Everything's working just fine. Let me type it to you. How's that?
Like CFL.
Hold on 1 second. Let's just make sure. Check, check, check. My microphone's working fine. Yeah. My microphone's working fine, Rabbi.
Might be on my end. 1 second. It's not your end. 1 second. All right, speak now.
Can you hear me? Check, check, check.
Still can't hear you. I don't know why.
Asking about
On your end or mine?
Doctor about Rabbi Google. Anyways, yeah.
Rabbi Dr. Google. I still can't hear you. I don't know why.
I don't know why. Everybody else can hear me just fine.
I can hear you now. 1 second. Speak.
Oh, can you hear me?
I hear you now. I can hear you now.
All right. Yeah. So my point was, you talked about when people being stringent when they should be lenient, and vice versa, lenient when they should be stringent. Today, in this day and age, we see problems. The problems you're pointing out, I'm trying to get you centered back up here. With people asking Rabbi Google or Dr. Google, they're always, just quickly going to that. And does this principle apply when people take that quick shortcut? They're not putting in any effort. But you have to
know, most people doing that, I mean, there are people that just, looking for a source or whatever, and they may, it's just easier to look that up, go to Google and see what the source is or whatever. But we do
see the stringent people being too stringent when they need to be more lenient, and they're being too lenient when they need to be.
Again, but the people looking up in general do not have a point of reference. If you don't have a point of reference, then you don't know what you're looking at. That's when you have to ask, right? Some people say, "Oh, I heard this." Okay. Like someone asked me about certain things, like there's a certain song after Shabbos that the fourth meal that people sing, that some people sing or whatever. So someone tells me, well, the women in your community do it. So I said, no, not that I'm aware of. I was like, well, why? But according to this, they do. I was like, you want to ask me practically? Could be some women do. I'm not saying no women does it. I don't know women that do it. How many men do it? It's the whole question, right? But women don't do it. If women don't do it, then so fine. Should women say it? They have an obligation in the fourth meal just like a guy does, no question, unless, they can't eat anything, right? But in general, if they don't, there are sources that say they should do it, okay? And if they don't, are they going to fry in hell forever? No. They are not going to fry in hell forever, right? If a guy doesn't do it, are they going to fry in hell forever? No. It's a good thing to do, could be. I should be obligated to do it. It's not one of the, you have to know what these things are. You have to know what applies, don't apply. The problem is that people think they know a lot more than they do.
Right.
And they quote things now it might be true. What people are saying may be true, right? There may be this leniency. So who says you're allowed to rely on it now? But you have to know when it applies, where it applies. Most people looking at this stuff don't have a place of reference. If they don't have a place of reference, ask somebody, right? Ask somebody who knows what they're doing. Because what happens is you go to Rabbi Dr. Google, and what he could be saying is true, right? Certain things they look up could be true. Right? I'm not saying not, but you have to know when, where, what. You have to know how it applies, when it applies. You can't just look something up and say, oh, that's the answer. Now, I'm not saying it's not, right? I'm just pointing out you have to know when, right? You have to know when. And yeah, you have to know, you have to have a lot broader knowledge or even specific knowledge about this specific thing to know. Like, someone says, well, women should be doing this, but they don't. And no one's going to say otherwise. No rabbi worth their weight in gold is going to say, nope, they have to do this. No one's going to say that. Is it a good thing? Maybe a good thing to do. I'm not saying it's not a good thing to do, right? But if they're not doing it, you're not going to hold it against them, right? So you have to know. You have to know other things we might be more stringent on, but you have to know when that applies and how it applies. And most people, no offense, don't have a clue. It's the blind leading the blind because they think they know. They think they have enough knowledge. If someone comes in eating humble pie and they say, well, I'm not sure, does this really mean this? Does it mean that? Okay. It's one thing. But if a person comes and says, well, I already have this preconceived notion, and I already have this idea because I've already seen Rabbi Dr. Google say it, so what's your opinion? It's not a fair question. Because now you're saying, oh, but I saw this. Okay, so that should have been your question. Right? Is this really true? Does it apply? Either it will apply or won't apply. It's a problem. It's a problem because I've seen fake rabbis do things and rely on things that no one should ever rely on. Right? Even at a time where you wanted to be lenient and whatever. You have to know. That's why every person needs a mentor. They need their own rabbi to ask their questions to. If you know something is explicit, whatever, fine. If it's something where, it's questionable, so you have to know. You have to know what people do, what the custom is, when to invoke it, when not to invoke it, etc. So I've been spoiled for more than 20 years, that one of the top 5 rabbinical authorities in the world give me guidance. And say, yeah, this apply for this, won't apply for that, other things, whatever. Whatever it is, he's someone I can rely on, right? Most people, I think, would agree, right? You certainly be relied on. But you have to have shoulders. You have to have experience, and also you have to be very well learned. And I don't care, I don't care how many books people have read from Art Scroll, from Feldheim. They could have read 100 million things. They could be well versed, in these things, but you start asking them questions. That's when you see where the knowledge is. That's when you start asking intermediate questions. Does this apply in this case? Does it apply in that case? Doesn't it apply? Other things, you see if they can apply knowledge. Right. One of the things that when we talk about learning, it means the person can make an inference from one thing to another. Right. They can they can ask a question, answer a question. That doesn't mean we have all the answers. Right. There are a lot of things that are complex. Right. Don't have necessarily straight out answers. Have to be researched. Have to see where the question's coming from, who's asking the question. I mean, there are a lot of different factors. A lot of different factors involved, but one of the most important things is you have to have the requisite knowledge. And if you don't have the requisite knowledge, then you shouldn't be answering. If it's not something that you can look up and that's, relatively easy to look up. Because, we're going to see Pirkei Avos also says you have to know your place. And knowing your place, one explanation is that you know what you don't know. And what you need, you know when there's a question that's beyond you. And a person has to be humble enough to say, okay, I'm not sure. Right? I had a question once, and the question, someone had been adopted and they couldn't get into the file. Their adopted mother, find out if they're Jewish or not. So right away I would have said, well, if you go after the majority, right? You go after the majority, where the person was born, probably a non-Jew. But I said, this is beyond me. I went to my Rabbi. It's a very complicated question, according to him, right? I asked him about it. He said, what would you say? I said, you go according to the majority, right? And I had one of the great rabbinical authorities of the last generation, Moshe Feinstein, may his name be blessed, said the same thing. He said, yeah, you can go according to the majority. But I saw the response my Rebbe wrote. He had a whole bunch of doubts over there. So back and forth, whatever. But it wasn't what I thought was straightforward. He told me it's one of the most difficult questions he ever had to decide. Right? He had to look into. I would have answered it in 3 seconds. Right? I would have said, yeah, you go after the majority. Right? Where this person was born, it's probably less than 5% Jews there when he was born. So I said so. It would have been open and shut case. Right? He's a non-Jew. He has to go through conversion. Right? And a lot of people would have said the same thing. So he, in his response, he wrote that, he brought that down. But he had a whole bunch of doubts. Right? He had a whole bunch of doubts over there. So, to me, that it was open and shut case. Seemingly an open and shut case. To him, it wasn't. Right? So, whatever, I got to the bottom of it eventually. But in the end, in the end, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what question's a valid question. You have to know when to ask someone else. But if you're a Balgaiva, if you think you're God's gift to the world and can see, so I'm a rabbi, I can answer this. But you rely on things you should never rely on, that makes you a chump. My language. Doesn't make you a rabbi, makes you chump, right? Makes you stupid. Why in the world are you relying on something you should never rely on? What, because you have an ego? Forget your ego. Right? Get to the bottom of it. He said, no, you can't do it. You're not allowed to do it. You might not be popular, but who cares? Truth is truth. Right? You want to bend the rules. You want to, you want to work around things. Yeah, we can be lenient over here. Okay, let's see. Who's backing you up on this? Right? In other words, you have other rabbinical authorities behind you. Do you have other great rabbinical authorities behind you? Or you're talking out of your elbow? You're talking out of your elbow, fine. And there are a lot of people out there like that. You got to weed out the fakes from, people who know what they're doing. The problem is they give people like me a bad name. Yeah.
Well, what about legitimate discovery? Things that are testable, measurable. When you're dealing with certain things, if nobody's ever come up with it before, like we consider Albert Einstein, let's just say, they completely stopped calling things laws of nature at that point. I mean, scientifically, and they started to call things theory for a reason, because it was a weighted body of evidence that totally made the scientific community realize that, growth in learning is always going to happen. Discovery is going to happen. Now, I realize that the methodology or the approach of the Torah is encompassing in a way that is completely different. But if somebody discovers something, I have saw.
Oh, good. I'll give an example. Electricity.
Yes.
Right? Electricity was not known to the rabbis. So the question on Shabbos, are you allowed to kindle a fire? Right? You're not allowed to kindle a fire. Is electricity fire? Right? It's a good example. You say, oh, you're changing the Torah. It's not changing the Torah. The question is electricity fire? So someone says, oh, if I turn on and off a switch, I'm not doing anything. I said, okay, take off the plastic, take a screwdriver, and throw it in there. So I'm not going to do that. I said, why? You just told me it's not doing anything. He said, no, there's a circuit in there. I'll get electrocuted. Thank you very much. Now the question is that called a fire or not? Right? It's forbidden. Everyone agrees it's forbidden. The question is what category? Right? Most hold it's actually not fire. Regardless, it's something, if there's precedent, we know there's precedent, good, you can apply it. If there is no precedent, then you have to look into it, right? Then you have to look in, let's say, by electricity, you have to know how it works. You have to properly know how it works. Now, once someone investigated it, so someone knows what they're doing, they investigated it, they know how it works, then they can apply it. If you don't know how it works, how can you apply it? How can you say anything? You don't know how it works. It's very easy to say it's forbidden, right? It's very easy to say that, right? But you have to know how it works. So what about a microwave? Microwave doesn't heat up, right? It's microwaves. It doesn't heat up the same way as an oven. Totally different, right? It's totally different. Now the question is, okay, now you're pushing buttons or whatever, but let's say, is that fire? Is that considered heating something up? So if I would take something in a microwave, whatever it is, I heat it up for 5 minutes. If I take something, put it in the oven for 5 minutes, right? Put it at a high temperature. I touch both of them, I'm probably going to get burnt, right? I'm probably going to get burnt. So you can say, but it's not the same. It doesn't work the same. I understand. But at the end of the day, is it similar enough that I can say that I can compare them? Certainly. Right? According to most rabbinical authorities, not the same. Right? But they still hold it's forbidden. Yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing stuff. If people really think about this for a second, especially with the new development of smart technology, just imagine they come out with a set of goggles or glasses you wear where, say, you look at your microwave, turns it on, or you look at your light switch and it turns it on. The point of the matter is that Hebrew law, the way you're discussing it, actually shows where a line is crossed. It shows clearly where a line is crossed. Developing a technology or something to go around it, side skirt it, sounds to me like something that should be punishable rather than
there's
praised.
Certain things that there's a technological company here that works with doing things, let's say using the telephone, right? Let's say using a telephone on Shabbos, so when I push the button, it doesn't hit a circuit straight away. It's like a cause and effect, right? There's certain things, let's say like what they call like a Shabbos elevator, right? A Shabbos elevator, let's say in a building or in a hospital, whatever it is, right? If you go on it, the more weight goes on it, the more heavy it works, right? So some of them work in different ways. Whatever the case is, if a person needs a Shabbos elevator, and I'm not allowed to push any buttons, but it stops at every floor. Now, if the Shabbos elevator works in the proper way, I could use it. If it's something someone doesn't need it, it'd be forbidden. Right? It'd definitely be something forbidden. But there are technological advances where, let's say someone can't climb up their stairs. Right? They got hip problems, leg problems, whatever it is. They have this chair, right? This chair lift. Or whatever. It's electronic. How can they use it? Okay, so they finagled a certain way where, it's not direct. It's not going directly into a circuit. It goes in a circuit, whatever. It goes in a roundabout way. However it works, right? However it works, they can get around certain things. Obviously not everything they can, right? But they are working within Jewish law. They can say, well, if there's a way, if there's a will, there's a way. Well, not everything's permissible. Right? So if it's already rabbinical in nature, you take it down another level, right? It's not direct. It's already, you take it 2 levels down, you take it down a 3rd level, right? Again, there are ways, there are ways to do it. Not my area of expertise. But the point is that, there are needs today, and they try and figure out ways in order that electronically they do it in a way where it's okay, it doesn't transgress Shabbos, right? But not everything is like that. They came up with a light that has they have a light bulb that's lit, right? And it goes on like a swivel, right? In other words, if I want it on, I turn it one way. If I want it off, I turn it the other way. They're gonna say, well, that's turning on. You're not turning on and off anything. You're just covering the light. Right? It's not even doing it on a timer. Right? It's called like a Shabbos lamp, I think that's what it's called, whatever it is, right? But it covers it in a swivel. So what's the problem? I don't even have I don't even have to move it, right? The thing can stay in place. I just flick it, right? I just flick it. So there are ways, there are ways to get around, to get around certain things. There was something a few years ago, the whole controversial thing that was about a Shabbos switch to control lights. You push a button, and again, it's not going directly into the current. It's doing something else, and then it gets there. Whatever. There was a whole controversy whether it was permitted or not. Right now, one of the reasons a lot of the rabbis wanted to come out against it, even if it was permissible, is that they didn't want people to disgrace Shabbos by turning on and off a switch. Right?
Or motion sensors. Motion sensors wouldn't work.
I'm going to say motion sensor, whatever it is. Just turning off and on lights when you don't need them. Right? So since if you do it in a regular way, it's going to be forbidden. Right? So you do it this way, it's like you're circumventing the law. That was one. That was one. There were a few issues. Right? But here you're going to get people regular, if they're doing that on a regular basis, you put it on all kinds of switches to do it. Right? There's kind of like a disgrace in Shabbos. Maybe it's nothing wrong with it. Maybe. Right? The rabbis had issue with it also, and the mechanism, how it worked. Right? But there were two issues. One is how it works. And the second is, should a person go around pushing buttons and doing these things? Is that really the spirit of Shabbos? Again, even if it's permissible, it's a philosophical idea, right? More, philosophical idea more than a halachic idea. But there are ways around, around certain things that really should be forbidden. But then, not listen. When it comes to a Shabbos elevator, even if it's permissible, someone who's healthy shouldn't use it. Let's say better, not allowed to use it. But it's used in a proper way. It only stops at every foot, whatever. Okay, you're not allowed to be lazy. You're healthy enough. You don't need it. If someone can't walk, or their walking is strained, it's going to make it easier. So they're allowed to use it.
30 seconds.
Right? Whatever. Yeah, if they want to get upstairs, they're allowed to, they're allowed to use it. They can't walk. Someone had, I know somebody's got, has kneecaps replaced. Right? He can't walk very well. I mean, it's better than it used to be. But, if he was on the second floor, there was an elevator, he could use it. He can't walk that far. It's too much of a strain. Right? Too much of a strain. It doesn't have to be on the fifth floor. It could be on the second floor, but he can't make it up 2 flights. Right? Just his legs won't do it. So for him, it's permissible. Right? So what about somebody else who's healthy? Can't use it. Right? In other words, it's only going to apply to certain people. It's not going to apply for everyone. Right? So, we can't say, since it's permissible, I can use it all. Who says? We just said you can't be lazy. So, you can't compare one thing to another. Right? You know what happens when you make assumptions. That, if it's good for him, it's good for me. You're in the same category. You're not huffing and puffing. You don't have a problem with your legs. So why in the world should you be able to use it? But it's permissible. Doesn't matter if it's permissible. It's only permissible for certain people, right? So, that's why I say, there are a lot of people out there, and we know we've already discussed, a number of times. There are people that are frauds. When it comes to dealing with Noahides, there are a lot of frauds. More, people dealing with converts, a lot of frauds out there. And they don't know their nose from their elbow. And they should never give classes in public. They should be condemned at every level. And it's not a problem with Lashon Hara. Because these people mislead people. Because in my language, they don't know diddly squat. And if they don't know, keep your big mouth shut. That's what you should do. Right? Do I claim to know everything? No. Plenty what I don't know. But, I got people to go to. I'm not relying on leniencies. Never should be whatever. So,
wow. I'm going to have to chat with you afterwards.
I've seen people that, have done this and they have no credentials. I mentioned once before this idea of a Purim party and having yeshiva guys going to a bar. Why in the world would you tell them to go there? Show me your rabbinical authority permits it. This rabbi said, I'll put it all over my synagogue door. Show me. Guy's a fraud. Guy's an absolute fraud. Doesn't make sense. Not everything's permissible for doing outreach. And there are a lot of things that are forbidden. So what are you taking pure souls and sticking them in a pub? You're only going to mess them up. What's the point? Right? I mean, that's just one. That's just one. I can think of myriad examples. Right? But again, people have egos also and say, oh, you said this about me, and I'm going to call you out, and I'm going to this, and I'm going to... So you see, they have bad character traits. It's like my way, the highway. There's certain things we've spoken about before I've never seen in my life. Never. Someone comes out against somebody because what they're doing is wrong, says, hey, you don't know how to learn. Who says you know how to learn? They call out great people. Like, who are you? Who in the world are you? Just because you don't like what someone says against you when they're right, that means you call them out like a 2-year-old, right? What credentials do you have, for goodness sakes? You don't have any. So keep your big mouth shut. So we don't do it in social media, right? That is spoken about a lot, right? But people like that is a mitzvah to deride them. And it's a mitzvah to come out against them because they're frauds. Because they misrepresent. And when they misrepresent, people say, oh, but he said this. So what? Right? I mean, I've heard a lot of crazy things. This doesn't make sense. And these people should never be listened to. They'll be like, oh, you're speaking Lashon Hara. Yeah, go learn the laws of Lashon Hara and come back to me. You embarrass someone in public. They should be embarrassed. Technically, if I could take away their livelihood, it'd be permissible. You say, wow, that's pretty strong. Yeah. And who's the crazy fanatic that says that? Tosfos. Right? The Baalei Tosfos on the Talmud say that. You could take away someone's livelihood because of the evil that they commit. They're going to say, wow, that doesn't apply. Right? We're not going to put that into action. Doesn't matter. The point is you have to understand what these people are doing. You can knock them down all over the place. Right? Again, I'm not saying 100%, how far it should go. Right? But people have to be warned. And that's not Lashon Hara, because they're misleading people. Right? And someone who misleads people, they don't have a portion of the world to come. It's that severe, even if they don't know anything. A Reform rabbi is misleading people. Why should he have a portion of the world to come? He doesn't know anything. There's a story I heard last week. I think it was last week. Someone was coming back to Judaism and was putting on tefillin, and he belonged to a Reform synagogue. The rabbi didn't even know how to put on tefillin. He didn't even know how to tie tefillin. You want to tell me what he knows? And how much he knows? Is ignoramus. Total ignoramus, like most of them. Doesn't matter if he doesn't know. If he's misleading people to go against Torah, right? You can deride them. You can make fun of them. You can make sure people, again, it has to be for the right reason, right? You have to warn people so they know not to listen to these people, right? So, again, there's a way to do it. I don't advise making a war on Facebook and doing it in social media. It's not the way, right? But, if someone were to say, wow, is this person good? To listen to, so I'll tell them no. Or I'll tell them yes, right? It depends. It depends. But if they're a total fraud, so people have to know. And thank God, a lot of people know who not to listen to, and who the real frauds are. But it's sort of one of my pet peeves that people call you out and say things, whatever, and they just have zero credentials, at all. Wow, look at that. I only got through half the Mishnah.
Pretty good stuff, Rabbi. Pretty good stuff. I think, when it comes to, say, pointing out frauds, when it comes to, I think we've discussed, erring on the side of kindness, but there is that time to be totally firm about it and not bend. I mean, as a B'nai Noach, it's even harder to know because we don't know the whole depth of Torah, Talmud, and we're not quite clear exactly when this or that. And this is why I really treasure things like the ethics of the fathers, because I find that it gives us a basis to at least grasp the ethics. You need to understand. And it's just like you spoke about today. We need to actually get it rather than just go for that quick answer. Here, this guy says this, but you don't get the whole context behind the scene because this other person said that. You don't get the whole context behind the scene. Anybody can pick an answer and try to stick it.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you don't get the whole context as long as they're telling you what you need to be told. Even if you don't get the context, but they're relying on something they never should, that's something totally different. Right? In other words, people ask me questions, I don't go through all the detail because there's no point. First of all, I don't have the time. Second of all, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sometimes, they'll push me on and say, okay, why is it like this and why not like that or whatever? Fine. Right? But usually you're not going to go through that whole thing. You're going to say, no, we don't do this or we don't do that, whatever. If there are other questions on it, it's one thing. Right? But you're not going to get that, give or take. Right? Because the person will say yes, no, whatever. Will they give an answer? Maybe they won't. Whatever the case is. But again, you have to know, who you're going to. Right? And who the person is.
A friend of mine online there, Cole, who lives just south of me over the U.S. border, he made a comment about building a fence around Torah, specifically the whole point for keeping that framework solid, clarifying the boundaries. I mean, can you elaborate? I think we even spoke about this at the beginning of the Mishnah about being deliberate in judgment.
Let me give you an example, right? People have the problem, and people say the rabbis added on to the Torah. Making a fence around the Torah so you don't transgress a more severe prohibition, right? Just like bad character traits, you're gonna work hard not to allow them to overcome you. Let me give you one example. I made a very blistering video, last year.
Just one?
Somebody wanted. Oh no, this one was even short. It was like 8 minutes, right? It was about somebody, a rabbi of a synagogue, bringing a motivational speaker into a synagogue. So you're going to say, what's the problem with that? The problem with the motivational speaker was he's a missionary. Now, Rabbi Skolback said he's not a top-tier missionary. He's not a top-tier missionary. So there, he's only going to be a motivational speaker. Right? He's not going to mention anything about JC and none of this. He's a motivational speaker. Now let me ask you. I ask you the $1 million question. Should you be bringing a non-Jewish motivational speaker who happens to be a missionary into your synagogue? Even if he's not going to missionize, you don't think he's going to hand out cards afterwards or whatever. But even to bring him into a social hall, he's not going to speak from the pulpit, obviously. This guy was getting paid a good amount of money, right? Like $40,000. He's getting paid big money to do this, right? The Federation gave him money. Other people gave him money. Anyway, there was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure for this guy to back down. And the rabbi wouldn't back down. So this guy felt because of all the bad publicity, he backed down. So this bozo rabbi gets up and says, what a terrible thing. What a disgrace. A bunch of thugs, a mafia, whatever, and he wouldn't back down. So I made this blistering video, like something bogus in Boca Raton or whatever it was. It was like 8 minutes. You can Google it on my YouTube channel. And I said, you don't give this person a place to speak. I could have named 10 motivational speakers that are Orthodox you could have brought in. Why do you need to bring this guy in for? That happens to be, forget a non-Jew, right? He's a missionary. This guy also brought Dr. Ruth. You know what Dr. Ruth is? Sex therapist. What in the world are you bringing a sex therapist into your synagogue? You moron. What are you doing? Yeah, it's good publicity. You're going to bring a lot of people in. She's a sex therapist. You get her, whatever. People can ask her questions in a public forum. You out of your mind? That's what I said. So that's basically what I said. How can you bring this guy in even if he's not going to missionize? Isn't he a well-respected rabbi? Don't people come to him for advice? People do. Well-known, well-respected. My language, he's a joke. Right? He didn't want to produce sources who said it was okay for him to do it. Yeah, because these people would be the laughing stock of the religious world. It doesn't matter who they were. what rabbis they were. Yeah, you got to be a fool to put your name to it. Right? The guy's a missionary. Why in the world are you bringing him as a motivational speaker? Why? Because you can? Because you want ratings? You want to draw people? There's a limit. There's a limit. Now, again, even if you tell me he's not speaking from the pulpit, even if he's speaking from another room, whatever the case is, he's not going to missionize, he's not going to leave any cards, cards there so people can, he can follow up with people. He's not doing any of that. Just a motivational speaker.
Rabbi, this is just like sharing the scent of a flower, but saying it's not that flower. When you think about it, the aroma that comes from specific flowers or plants
this guy,
are unique.
He's the rabbi himself, did not have any problem. So when you leave your mind open until it falls on your brains fall on the floor, how can you not say? How can any normal person not say that's an issue? I mean, you can say he's not going to speak about that. We're not that. All these different things. Why in the world you bringing him? Were you afraid to bring in a motivational speaker for a third of the price? You're gonna get something for $3,000. I would have done it for $5, $10, whatever. $40,000, $50,000 for a motivational speaker, guy's a missionary that the Federation going to give money to. That's crazy. That is ludicrous, right? Yeah, that person should be derided. Person's a chump and a joke. Why? Because you don't bring somebody like that in your synagogue. You don't bring a sex therapist into your synagogue. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're modern or whatever. That's just not appropriate material. In this, I don't care if she speaks in a social room, right? This is not a personal vendetta, right? I'm nothing against Dr. Ruth, right? Whatever, but spewing that garbage, right, to Jewish souls in an Orthodox synagogue, you gotta be crazy, right? It's not the most modest of things, is it? It's not, right? So why you bring it in for ratings for this? I wonder how much she got paid and how much the Federation's paid. That is ludicrous, right? You want to tell me, okay, I'm a fanatic and all the other Orthodox fanatics. You think this is normal? Why don't you bring, a same-sex couple? Let them tell their stuff in an Orthodox synagogue. Why don't we bring them? We don't bring, Bessie the cow. You say, okay, bestiality. We're going to speak about our experiences. Isn't there a limit? There's a limit to what you're allowed to do, even for the sake of doing outreach or numbers or whatever. I mean, I know the obvious reason you bring me in is for numbers, because I'm bringing you the best numbers over here. But the point is, I didn't make fun of the CFL yet. But the point is, as we're winding down, this person, you should never listen to a word he says, because that's what he's done. He doesn't have remorse, doesn't have regret. He said it was a disgrace what the Jewish community did. It's a disgrace? No.
Oh, Rabbi,
you bring an aberration into your synagogue, even if they don't speak from the pulpit, and you want to say that we're an that we went too far, to knock you down. I don't think so. You got the ultimate in chutzpah. The ultimate in chutzpah to bring somebody like that in a synagogue. Right? You think that, if I was a motivational speaker, let's say, right?
You are.
You think the church is going to bring me in to speak? I don't think so.
You wouldn't go anyway.
Right, but I'm saying, you think they're going to be interested in what I have to say if I'm not going to speak about Judaism? I don't think so. Because they have principles. And they have morals. Right? And they say, yesh gvul, there's a limit to what we're going to do. You have no limit. You have no morals. You have no scruples. So you can bring anybody to come in. Any aberration, any abomination. Say, sure, what's the problem? What's the issue? Dr. Ruth, motivational speaker. Thank you very much. Enough said.
Enough said. Rabbi, I think you've touched on a lot today. There's some great stuff in there. I just hope that people review this. Folks, you can always catch Rabbi Coffman on his Facebook page. He's got several of them. Or his webpage, orthodoxconversion.com. I want to encourage you, to reach out to him. Ask some questions. This class, Pirkei Avos, is something that I think more people should be tuning into. We've been getting some good numbers and up and down weeks. We've changed this slot schedule because I started a day job, and Rabbi Coffman can't do it during Shabbos. His schedule's so booked on Sundays. I'm just honored that he's still willing to share with us the ethics of the fathers. This is important stuff, and I hope that you take the time to review what he said. Even look up, get a copy of your B'nai Noah, get a copy of Pirkei Avos, read it, and see where it's coming from in its context, where he's sharing as he's been passed on to him, and you'll see there's depth of what true ethics is and what morals is, and when to stand and when not to stand on a matter. When you're allowed to be lenient. And it's just an honor to hear him share of the experiences that he's had. Rabbi, have you got any final closing words since we're over 90 minutes, if you want to say anything to the audience?
Not everything a person sees is simple, right? So the most important thing we can take out from any of this is you have to have your own mentor. Right? You have to have your own guide, and that guide has to have credentials. And if they can't produce credentials, then you run like the plague. Right? And they say, I don't have to produce it. I have my sources, whatever. Right? That means they're bluffing. Right? And it's not so easy, to find people that, are on the up and up. I mean, there are plenty. There are a lot that do good work. Right? But the problem is that the frauds give us all a bad name. So, asking the questions, 100%, we love questions, right? This is what this is what the purpose is. Because if you want direction in life, you got to get it from the right source. And if you get it from the wrong source, you could just be spinning your wheels, right? And I know, a lot of people have gotten burnt, right? They've definitely gotten burnt in a lot of ways. And, finding the right person is not easy. Right. So, you just have to know where to look.
Wow. Well, there you go, folks. I think you're always safe to go with those that are legitimate Orthodox rabbis. And this is why I endorse the Noahide World Center in Jerusalem. I believe that we as B'nai Noah should have that connection with Jerusalem, with Israel, especially with those that are of the Orthodox faith, those that are sharing true Torah as it's been handed down from Moshe Rabbeinu forward, all the way from Hashem. And, folks, till next week, Hashem willing, I want to thank you, Rabbi Coffman. Folks, have a wonderful, wonderful week.